Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keith in the studios of our flagship station, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, today, as always, you can also join us on Comcast, Channel 15, and AT&T, Channel 99. In the Birmingham-Bloomfield area on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Join us on Channel 10 in Waterford on the media network of Waterford, as well as on Channel 10 in Lake Orion and Orion Township on Orion Neighborhood Television, and again on Channel 15 in Southfield on the City Cable 15 of Southfield. You can watch us online during our live shows Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon on Facebook.com/CivicCenterTV15 and Facebook.com/LakesFM, as well as on CivicCenterTV.com by clicking on our Watch Live link, or by visiting My Michigan TV, otherwise known as MyMy. Go to MyMyTV.com to learn more information, to watch us live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Subscribe for free and learn more information about where you can download their free MyTV app on your smartphone and on your smart TV. And if you want to learn more about all of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets, as well as their other original program, you can also find that on our website at CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast, where you can click on all the links toward various partnering stations, including 88.1 WBFH, the BIF, which is the service of the Bloomfield Hills School District, also joining us on the radio. Also on our Megacast page, you can click links that will take you to on-demand editions of our full episodes and each individual interview. If you're not able to tune in for the full episode or for a full interview during our live shows, you can find them on demand anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on our website at CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast. Most of our show days, we have those posted by mid to late afternoon. Also on our website at CivicCenterTV.com, if you go to our coronavirus page at CivicCenterTV.com/coronavirus, very helpful links at the very top of that page from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division, so that you can stay up to date on information regarding COVID-19, including the spread of COVID-19, the variants of COVID-19, such as Delta and Omicron, that are spreading in our community at this time, precautionary tactics that you can employ in your life, such as mask wearing, social distancing, of course, vaccines and booster shots are another one you can learn more information about and sign up for at our website, CivicCenterTV.com/coronavirus, by clicking on any of those links from the CDC, the MDHHS, or the Oakland County Health Division. And on that page, we also have links to articles from across the state of Michigan from different journalistic outlets, keeping you up to date on the COVID-19 pandemic and more. Today's top story from the Detroit Free Press: Michigan contact tracing is slowing down, and the state is basically saying, quote, folks need to just assume they've been exposed. That's a good strategy. Coronavirus contact tracing has all but stopped for the vast majority of Michigan residents amid the worst yet pandemic surge. That means no one is likely to tell you if you've been exposed to someone who has tested positive for the virus, unless the person who's infected picks up the phone and lets you know. Quote, we really wish we could contact everybody, but there has always been a plan that there's going to come to a point where we're really going to need folks to take on personal responsibility as this shifts from a pandemic to something that's endemic, something that we're going to have to live with, said Nick DeRusha, health officer of Luce, Mackinac, Alger, and Schoolcraft's District's Health Department, and president of the Michigan Association for Public Health. Continuing on, quote, local public health is not going to be calling every case or calling every contact, and folks are going to have to really understand that things that they're going to need to do in order to protect themselves, protect their families, and protect their communities. Instead, local health departments are prioritizing COVID-19 outbreak investigations and contact tracing for people who live in nursing homes or other long-term care facilities, shelters, group homes, prisons, and jails, and those who attend schools or live in dormitories. Quote, this redirection of public health resources to focus on outbreak venues and clusters position limited resources to have the greatest impact, said Lynn Sutphin, a spokesperson for the state health department. Excuse me. There, now that my throat's clear, you don't have to hear the crackling for 30 seconds. It's part of a shift in the strategy for handling the pandemic, as thousands of new cases are reported daily, and the capacity to conduct contact tracing shrinks along with the people's willingness to cooperate. On Wednesday, the 7-day average of new daily cases broke a pandemic high of 17,589 in Michigan. There are simply not enough local public health department workers to conduct contact tracing for each person who is newly infected. A new report from the state health department shows that more than 362,000 cases of the virus reported in December, just 4.4%, or about 15,900 people, provided the names of close contacts to health officials. And of those who did, only 26.7%, or roughly 4,250 people, were successfully reached and told that they had been exposed to the virus. Those who have been reached haven't always been kind or helpful, Darusha said. Often contact tracers are met with anger and frustration. That was especially true during the fall Delta variant surge. Quote, a lot of people would yell or scream at us simply don't answer the phone anymore, Darusha said. They don't pick up, they don't talk to us, they don't tell us their contacts, they just ignore us. To avoid that, but still get the message out, quote, a lot of public health departments have moved to automated systems where we can send out text messages. Folks can reply to surveys via text, and they can respond that way, so it's not a phone call every time, end closed quote. Now that local health departments have such limited capacity to contact people who have been exposed, Darusha said it's important that Michiganders follow the guidelines to slow the spread of the virus. Yeah, that's great guidance, because that's exactly what people have been doing this entire time, right? Yeah, that people have listened to that. They've been receptive to that before. So let's go over those again for those of you that maybe are listening, or for those of you that have ignored this for the past 2 years and may need to wake up a little bit here. Wearing a high-quality mask when in indoor public places, avoiding large gatherings, getting vaccinated and boosted when eligible, getting tested if symptoms appear, following isolation and quarantine recommendations, and lastly, especially in this case, considering contact tracers at this point would either be overwhelmed with doing their job effectively, and local health departments have now had to focus their strategies for contact tracing more on clusters or more on common places where infections are potentially of origin. Calling close contacts if you test positive to tell them they may have been exposed from being around you. That's very important at this time. If you are exposed to COVID-19, if you are COVID-19 positive, you need to be thinking personally about who you've been around recently, whether it be at work, if you've gone to the grocery store, especially unmasked in any of these situations, especially if you're around people that you know are not vaccinated and are more at risk because of that to severe symptoms or severe outcomes from COVID-19. That's basically what this is getting at. This article from the Detroit Free Press on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. It's basically saying the contact tracing operations that have been running throughout this pandemic are shifting gears. They're not entirely going away, but they're basically going away in the form that we've been used to. You're not going to get as many calls from your local health department, if any, if you've been exposed in a position where you've been exposed to the virus, because in many cases people are either not listening, they're not answering the phone, they're not providing the information, or they're straight up ignoring the fact that they need to be contacting people that are close to them that they may have exposed to COVID-19. Again, that full article from the Detroit Free Press at the top of the coronavirus page under our headlines at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Also making headlines as COVID-19 continues to spread in our communities. That includes our schools. What a shocker. This is from Bridge, Michigan. The onslaught of Omicron variant of COVID-19 is crumbling Michigan's system for reporting outbreaks in schools as well, making it difficult for parents to know how widespread the virus is in classrooms. Some districts have told parents to work under the assumption that there could be COVID present in all schools and classrooms. Earlier this month, the state advised local health departments they no longer had to do broad contact tracing, which many departments had already abandoned anyway. Without contact tracing to allow districts to identify students and staff to test and quarantine, local health departments are unable to supply data to the state for weekly reports tallying school outbreaks. Those reports, which health officials say were always an undercount of total COVID cases among students and staff, are now even less accurate. Elizabeth Hertel, the director of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, acknowledged the stress on parents, saying, quote, with the number of cases and contacts that we have, we just do not have the human resources across the state to do all of that contact tracing, she told Bridge, Michigan on Wednesday. This week, COVID cases hit another high in the state as they reported 17,589 cases over the past 7 days. By comparison, average daily cases had dipped to under 200 last summer. So just a little bit off, aren't we? Local health officials, quote, are doing everything that they can, and closed quote, to track COVID-19, Hertel said. But nearly 2 years into the pandemic, and as highly contagious Omicron variant races across the state, it's increasingly up to individuals to control spread, to self-test, alert close contacts after a positive test themselves, and isolate and quarantine when recommended, she and other health officials have said. Local health departments, too, would like to continue contact tracing, but, quote, what is ideal and what is realistic, that's where we're hitting the rub right now, said Norm Hess, who is the director of the Michigan Association of Local Public Health, which represents the state's 45 local health departments. Again, if you want to learn more information about what you should do if you're exposed to COVID-19, if you become COVID-19 positive, so that you can conduct your own personal contact tracing as well as provide support and information to your local health department so that maybe they can assist with contact tracing where it is plausible to do so. Go to civiccentertv.com/coronavirus and click on either the CDC resources or, more realistically for the local area and the state area, the state of Michigan and the Oakland County links, so you can get more information, so you can get in contact with the Oakland County Nurse on Call hotline, either by calling, by emailing, by texting, so you can get more information on reporting a positive case if you need to, or if you are positive, so that contact tracing can maybe be conducted, or that you can get guidance on how to go about contact tracing yourself so that we can limit the spread of COVID-19. COVID-19 is going to continue to spread. It's the nature of this virus, even with vaccinations, which are not supposed to stop the spread of COVID-19. They're supposed to limit the symptoms of COVID-19. And by the numbers we get from our hospital systems, by the testimony from our hospital systems about the results of those vaccinated versus those unvaccinated entering our hospital systems, that's kind of been how the outcomes have been, as predicted at this time. So learn more information, both about vaccination, about other precautions, but also about what steps you need to take if you're exposed to COVID-19 or if you test positive for COVID-19 to help out these local health departments that are overwhelmed, and our school districts that are overwhelmed, trying to track down this virus that has frankly gone so out of control in its spread that they can't keep up with the pace. And those numbers were already inaccurate as it was. Now they're getting even worse in their inaccuracy, so to speak. That full article from Bridge, Michigan at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Lastly, in our headlines today, Governor Whitmer plans to surge 300,000 COVID test kits to schools and priority groups. The governor announced plans on Thursday to surge those test kits to schools, long-term care facilities, jails, and homeless shelters. The governor asked the State Department of Health and Human Services to begin distributing more than 200,000 test kits to schools and priority groups, with another 100,000 kits slated to go out later this week, according to the governor's office. Governor Whitmer wants to get, quote, every test kit the state has available out to ensure availability of testing for the state's most vulnerable residents, and closed quote, amid a spike in infections and hospitalizations tied to the very contagious Omicron variant, she said in a press release. Demand for COVID-19 tests has jumped over the last month as the Omicron variant has led to a record number of new cases in Michigan over the 7-day period ending on Wednesday of this week. The state had reported 123,123 new infections, up 8% from the previous week. The public can locate COVID-19 testing sites through an online search tool, which is linked in this article, and is also available both from the State of Michigan link and the Oakland County link on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, which have information on testing sites throughout the state of Michigan and here in Oakland County. Last week, Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian, the Michigan Chief Medical Executive, citing modeling from academic institutions and the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, predicted the state's current surge will peak between late January and early February. Michiganders face a choice. She said, quote, do we want to work on bringing the peak down, or do we just want to let this Omicron surge explode, was the question that she had asked. That full article, as well as supporting materials linked in that article from the Detroit News, is linked on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We have a great show ahead of you today. In just a couple of minutes, I'll be joined by Sarah Gudenau. She is a Oakland University journalism student and the features editor at the Oakland Post. She will join me in just a few minutes. At the bottom of the 10 o'clock hour, The book guy, Bill Haney, will join me. Of course, he has a show on Independence Television in Clarkston. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about his illustrious career and longtime career in book publishing at 10:40. At 11 o'clock, Kerri Vizena, the head of school at the Jaffet School in Clawson, will join us about some of the school's charitable efforts over the holiday season, as well as their continued educational efforts during this ongoing pandemic. At 11:20, Kelly Hausman, a licensed therapist, will join us to talk about mental health as it pertains to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we're getting toward the end of January and people's New Year's resolutions are changing or maybe being dropped for a variety of different reasons, she will join me at 11:20, and then we'll cap off the show at 11:40 talking with Chuck Christian, a former University of Michigan tight end and the survivor of the sexual abuse of Dr. Robert Anderson while at the University of Michigan. He will talk about the $490 million settlement between the victims and the university that was announced earlier on this week. That's all coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line, for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
72.7% of high school students get less than the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. This can cause pain, obesity, and can very negatively affect your mental health. When you have a consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, you get sick less often, lose more weight, and have better relationships with those around you. For more information about the dangers of sleep deprivation, go to sleepfoundation.org. This message is brought to you by the WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more information about our show by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you can learn more information about everywhere that we broadcast live and live to tape. Find all of our shows and each interview on demand and more. Again, civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining me now is Sarah Gudenau. She is a Oakland University journalism student and the features editor at the independent student newspaper, the Oakland Post, as well. Sarah, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So first off, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a journalism major. Or a journalism student. What had drawn you to that path for your career and for your studies?
Sure. Well, my decision for journalism as my path wasn't really that straightforward. I actually entered university as an undecided student. It's hard to know what you want to do when you're 17, but I did know that I wanted a field that I could put my creativity to use. So what I actually ended up doing, I had a printed list of all the majors that Oakland University had to offer, and I went through one by one, X'd out the hard passes, circled the maybes, and one of those maybes was journalism. So I took the introductory course, and it turns out that I really enjoyed it. I've always loved reading and writing, and I really appreciate storytelling. And I've kind of discovered that feature writing is an area of journalism that I especially like, and one that, you know, as a journalist, you get to interview a bunch of different people and hear different perspectives, and it's your job to kind of piece it together and make a coherent narrative or story out of it. So that's what really draws me to it.
And so you're the features editor currently at the Oakland Post, which is an independent student-ran newspaper at Oakland University. And it's interesting because in journalism, there's so many different paths, especially with the internet today, that you can go as a journalist, as a reporter, or a producer, or any form of a storyteller in that industry today. And so for you, going and working on the team at the Oakland Post and being a features editor and a writer as well, what really drew you to that focus in journalism and specifically to the features? You touched on it a little bit as you told us why you chose journalism as a major, but what really drew you to that among all the other options that are there in journalism?
Sure. Well, I actually started out as a graphic designer at the Oakland Post. Funnily enough, I had a media design class. And the features editor position was one that was open. And while I did enjoy doing graphic design, writing and editing is more my strong suit. And really, I did have a features writing class that kind of opened my eyes to feature writing. But once I kind of started that position is where I found my appreciation and passion for editing itself.
And so journalism doesn't come to a stop with the pandemic like many other industries that can take a pause or that can take and stop altogether. Journalism, reporting, even at the level of a student newspaper, that can't stop with the pandemic. Stories continue to need to be told, and information continues to need to go out to the public. But it can be really challenging, I would imagine, for any journalism major, for any journalist to continue to tell these stories and collect the information that they need, especially for features where you're talking to so many people about so many different topics. Touch a little bit on the challenges that you experienced and how you overcame them to continue to do what you do for the Oakland Post and that your entire team over there has continued to do to write these features during the pandemic.
It's certainly been challenging. At the Oakland Post, we are working remotely right now, and we have been remote on and off throughout the pandemic. And what we've learned is that it takes a lot more communication than normal. We're not able to all be in the newsroom together, coming up with ideas or just editing, writing, putting together the publication. And so it takes a lot more communication. And we do have a really strong team. Everyone's really supportive and pushes each other to do the best work that they can. So to overcome that, we've just been over-communicating.
We're joined by Sarah Gudenau. She is an Oakland University journalism student, as well as the features editor for the Oakland Post, which is their independent student newspaper there at Oakland University. And so you've written a couple of interesting features fairly recently. Just a few days ago, you released an article with some tips for students that are continuing in now this fifth semester of learning under the pandemic, whether it's been in person or it's been virtual or been some sort of hybrid or a little bit of all of the above, to provide them some insight into steps that they can take to navigate the COVID-19 fatigue, the Zoom fatigue, and just a general fatigue of dealing with a crisis like this that's so complicated while also being a student in a number of different areas. So to write this article, to provide these tips, I would imagine part of it was from personal experience and your own perseverance, but also from the experience of other students. What went into crafting these tips, these 10 tips that you provided for students to overcome some of the fatigues that continue to be there during being educated during this COVID-19 pandemic?
You're exactly right. There was some personal tips in there, but I also talked to numerous students that I know of, and I also interviewed a couple of professors for that story to get their takes. Everyone had kind of similar information, so I kind of combined it as well as put my personal input as well.
We're joined by Sarah Gudenau. She is an Oakland University journalism student and the features editor at the Oakland Post, which is their student newspaper over there at Oakland University. And another article you wrote was about the impact of some social media on the attention span of young people, including students both at the university level, but also younger students as well. And of course, in the last few years, TikTok has become a lot more popular among younger people that are consuming social media. And you had a really interesting feature on that as well, talking about the shrink in their attention span. Tell us a little bit about the focus of that story, some of the interesting things that you learned along the way, and from your conversations with students and with experts in media studies, what you learned about just how the use of social media, and in particular TikTok, is impacting younger people today.
While researching that, I learned that, well, there's not that much research on that specific topic. TikTok is a fairly new app, and so obviously there aren't many long-term or even short-term studies about how it specifically impacts students' attention spans. So it was difficult to find sources and to really make that my focus. But something that I learned in the process that I thought was really interesting, one of my sources, Kimberly Burnock, she's a psychotherapist. She made the point that just because there is a correlation potentially between higher social media use and shorter attention spans doesn't necessarily mean it's as simple as a cause and effect relationship. It's not very black and white. There's other factors to take into consideration that may be causing both of those things, such as mental illness. And she articulates it really well in the article.
And so did you also converse with students in building this feature and writing this feature to get a perspective from younger people? And not all students, of course, at any university are necessarily younger people, but particularly for this article, speaking to younger people that are the focus of this topic of conversation, and in those conversations that you may have had with them, what sort of factors did you piece together that came into their use of TikTok and their attention span as it relates to consuming that media, but consuming it on such a massive scale where people are often, they can go on there to watch these 15-second to 3-minute videos and be scrolling through TikTok for several hours?
Sure. Well, I started off with the idea kind of based on my personal experience. I felt that especially during the course of the pandemic, I've been on TikTok more and more, and my attention span seems to be smaller and smaller. And just talking amongst my friends or other students, I've heard similar experiences. And so when it came to the article itself, I did interview one student and got her take. And she told me about how she used TikTok for over an hour a day on average. We looked at the statistics collected by her phone and settings. And I also checked out what the national average is, which also is, I believe, over an hour a day. So that's where that perspective came in.
We're joined by Sarah Gudenau. She is an Oakland University journalism student as well as the features editor at their student newspaper, the Oakland Post. You can learn more information by just searching the Oakland Post on Oakland University's website at oakland.edu to learn more information and read some of these articles from Sarah and from others on the team as well. And so in the journalism curriculum, and particularly for you as someone that enjoys the writing side of journalism and more of the print or online written journalism side, obviously, you've had to have taken a lot of writing classes, or you will be taking more writing classes to improve in those skills. But what are some of the other focuses in your education to get that broad scope of what it takes to be a quality journalism? And how does that apply to the work that you do both in your own features with the Oakland Post, but also in the guidance that you provide to other features writers at the Post?
Sure. Well, I've had some pretty impactful courses. My advanced writing and editing class really is where I first experienced editing other my peers' work. We got good practice with AP style, and taught by that same professor, I had a class that was ethical issues in the media, where we explored things such as journalistic objectivity, how to be an ethical writer, like how does social media impact journalism. And so those are things I can keep in mind and pass down to the reporters whose work I'm editing. Kind of apart from a journalistic focus, my favorite class by far that I've taken at university so far was actually a gender communications class, which was really interesting. And I find that to be helpful, not only in my writing, but when I'm communicating with different reporters.
We're joined by Sarah Gudenau. She is the features editor at the Oakland Post, which is Oakland University's independent student newspaper. You can learn more information at oaklandpostonline.com. Again, that is oaklandpostonline.com. And so, Sarah, of course, we talked about a couple of your more recent features. What are other stories that you're currently working on, or that your team's currently working on over there at the Oakland Post that people can expect to enjoy here in the near future?
I'm currently working on a story analyzing where Oakland University stands as an LGBTQ plus friendly campus. That's in the works. I hope to talk to our Gender and Sexuality Center at the university, as well as students, to get their perspectives. And our team, we're always working on different university campus related stories. A big series that's been this whole semester and last semester was contract negotiations between administration and faculty, and that is still an ongoing series that people can check out.
Well, Sarah, thank you very much for joining us, telling us more about, of course, your interest in journalism, some of your recent articles with the Oakland Post, and, of course, about all the work that's being done over there at Oakland University's independent student-run newspaper.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Again, we've been joined by Sarah Gudenau. She's the features editor at the Oakland Post and a journalism student at Oakland University. You can read more of Sarah's articles as well as articles from all different departments over at the Oakland Post by visiting their website at oaklandpostonline.com. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we'll go from newspapers to books and speak with the book guy, Bill Haney, who also does a show, Conversations with Bill, on Independence Community Television in Clarkston. He will join us next. You are watching and listening to the Megacast.
It's the Great Lakes water, and so what people do ends up in our waterways.
Flushable wipes are just evil. They should be thrown away. They're impossible to destroy, and they can cause significant problems.
One of the main things when you're cooking is to not dump fats, oils, and greases down your drains.
They stick to the sides of pipes. They stick to everything they come in contact with. Don't put it down the sink.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM. Joining us now is the book guy, Bill Haney. He has been publishing books since 1986 and has been either an author, co-author, ghostwriter, editor, publisher, or consultant on more than 400 books, including those written by people such as Ernie Harwell, Dr. Jack Kevorkian, and more. And he is also the host of Conversations with Bill on Clarkston's Independence Television. Bill, thank you for being with us.
Nice to be here.
Appreciate having you on. So let's begin with your publishing career. It began in 1986, and as I said in your intro, over 400 different publications so far in your career. How did your journey into publishing begin?
Well, actually, it started in 1966 when I went on to the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research with a faculty appointment. And a charge to do a better job than they'd been doing in getting out the word on their research findings at the Institute. The Survey Research Center and the other units produce a lot of very important material, and it did not get to the general public. And so I launched, founded a program there, and the first book that we did was 1967. So I actually did probably 100 or so books there, and then went to the University of Michigan Press as the associate director and managing editor, and published a wider range of books, not just social science, but other sciences, and books of interest to people in the state of Michigan.
And so, as was also mentioned, you've written or been involved in the writing process in books with a lot of very notable people, such as Ernie Harwell, who was, of course, a legendary Detroit Tigers play-by-play broadcaster on the radio. You talk about writing his book, Tuned to Baseball, along with him, and how that relationship came to be.
Sure. I was a Tiger fan since the 1940s, actually, and followed them very, very closely through the previous announcers, names that people probably don't even know, Harry Heilman and Mel Ott, and a number of other announcers before Ernie came in '61. A great year for the Tigers. Norman Cash batted .361 that year. And the Tigers almost won the pennant. The Yankees did when Maris hit 61 home runs. So 61 was a big year.
Yeah.
And Ernie and I communicated quite a bit before I ever met him. And he asked me to be on his pregame show. I did a thing called the Detroit Tiger Fans Calendar, which kind of looks like that.
Okay.
And Ernie liked it and invited me to come on. We did an interview on the runway of going in Tiger Stadium, Briggs Stadium it was then.
Yeah.
And Ernie said, well, come on up and sit with me in the broadcast booth and let's have a cup of coffee and talk about books. Ernie was a voracious reader because he traveled a lot, and he would always have books with him to read on the plane and in the hotel when he had nothing else to do. And so we talked about books, and I said to Ernie that I thought he should do a book. And Ernie said, well, who's interested in my little stories? 20 seconds between pitches. And I said, well, a lot of people would be. And if you pass from this life without doing a book, it would be a great loss. And so Ernie that night mentioned this to Ms. Lulu. And she said, well, you listen to that, Mr. Haney, and you're going to do a book. And so Ernie then called me, asked me to come down to the ballpark again the next day. and we would talk further, and we did. He said, now what do I do? I'm no writer. Actually, Ernie was a very good writer, but his brother, one of his brothers had been a prominent writer, and so Ernie felt like he's the writer, I'm the voice. Anyhow, I told Ernie, I said, don't worry about it, I'll show you how to do it. And I said, you will work on the book, and then we'll get it out next spring. So he did, and that fall we polished it up. I told him, I outlined it, what chapters we might want to consider, characters of the game, and the umpires that he was fond of, and a lot of interesting stories. And I tried to get a publisher in New York to do it so that they would sell even more, but they said, no, we'll only sell 3,500 copies. We need 10,000. So I co-published the book with Diamond Communications in South Bend. They did a great job. We called it Tune to Baseball. That was Ernie's title all along. And very often authors come up with dopey titles, but that was a good one. And so we had sold 7,700 copies before we even went on press. Ended up selling, I think, 27,000 in hardcover and 100,000 in paper. So much for the brilliance of New York book publishers. And Ernie then got to meet a lot of his fans, and that's one of the reasons I did the book, so Ernie could meet them in person. And he set the state record by far, signing 595 books when we launched it. That was in Okemos. And nobody's come near that. That's an incredible launch. And it just went that way from then on. So, and I ended up doing several more books with Ernie after that. So it was fun, it was enjoyable, it was important, good for Ernie, good for the people of the state of Michigan.
And what was interesting, Bill, too, that you had said was Ernie's apprehension initially to writing a book about his experiences and about baseball because of his brother's writing ability. And as you said, he felt like he was the voice and his brother was the writer. But that's what makes your relationship with him so interesting. And so many other people and their relationship with their co-writers and their co-authors or ghost writers so interesting is often you have these people that are great storytellers like Ernie Harwell. To be a play-by-play announcer, you have to inherently be an excellent storyteller, but may not be able to necessarily put those to words in a written form. And then that relationship that they have with people that are formally writers, such as yourself, how does that help in the process to get these great storytellers that have a story to be told, that have something compelling and interesting to present to other people, and that relationship with their writers to ultimately get that information, get those stories into a written form that is compelling and engaging for readers?
You're right. That's exactly the big question. Many people and a lot of good reporters have great stories, but don't have, in fact, newspaper people have that problem more often than not because they're used to writing against deadline, writing a small amount of copy, filing it right away, and doing a book. And many of them have tried and not been able to do it, to even create the book, let alone make it work. They're good examples of other kinds. Lynn Henning, for example, did a number of books with him on Michigan State. He was a fine writer and did a great job on books. But then I had my friend Tom Hemingway, who was the voice at the University of Michigan. To your point about a man who was a voice and could communicate, but could he write? And Tom was very candid. Most of the books I've done have been my ideas that I just thought made sense. Who should do this book? And that's mostly the way that they came about. And so I approached Tom Hemingway, same way. I knew he had a lot of stories. And Tom was apprehensive, even though his name was Hemingway. He didn't feel like he was a writer. And so we teamed up on it. And we did this book, Life Among the Wolverines, an inside view of U of M sports by Hemingway with Bill Haney. And by the time we got a third of the way, maybe by halfway through the book, Tom felt much more comfortable. By the time we got to the end of it, he was fine. And he, as I thought he would be, was a fine writer. He just didn't know it. And that happens. It happened with J.P. McCarthy. We never did get that book done because Joe felt that it was painful for him to write. He knew he was a good writer, and he was, but it tortured him. And so he procrastinated and procrastinated. And a book that should have been done and could have been done wasn't done. And Joe would have been good because the stuff that he did write to show me was excellent. But he knew that it was likely he would procrastinate himself out of it, and that's exactly what happened.
Another interesting figure in especially Detroit history, Michigan history, and even in U.S. history that you wrote alongside with was Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who is, of course, known as Dr. Death. Talk about your relationship with Dr. Kevorkian and your role in helping him tell some of his stories as well, especially being that in his case, instead of being a renowned and beloved figure such as Ernie Harwell and some of the other people that you've written with, he was more of a controversial figure.
Very much. And Jack was a very complicated person. Yeah. I liked Jack a lot. He was a nice guy. Very different than the public image of him in many ways. But that came about because a very fine writer, Mike Betzold, was covering the Detroit Tigers and had written a manuscript that he brought to me and wanted to publish called Queen of Diamonds, the history of the Detroit Stadium, Brick Stadium, Tiger Stadium. And I had a lot of other books going then and told him I'd buy the book, but I really couldn't take it on as a publisher at that time and do the good job by it. He ended up doing the book later. But I said, if you're interested in doing the other story that you're covering, that's important because I want to do a definitive book on assisted suicide. So it will raise people's awareness on either side of the issue. And so I said, if you want to do that. And Mike resisted. But then he called me 3 or 4 weeks later and said, well, the situation's changed. I said, why? And he said, well, Jack just did another assist. And it was my cousin. And so he really got into the story. He had covered the first few assists. And so we did a book called properly, Appointment with Dr. Death. And it did what we wanted. It raised the issue greatly. Al Pacino made a film based on this book called What You Don't Know, Jack. Yeah. BBC did a terrific documentary, again, drawn heavily from this book. And so this book triggered and contributed greatly to elevating the discussion of assisted suicide in this country.
We're joined by Bill Haney, the book guy on the Megacast. You can also view his show, Conversations with Bill, on Independence Community Television out of Clarkston. And you can learn more information about that by searching Independence Television of Clarkston on YouTube to watch all of his shows. And so you talked about your book projects with many prominent figures and other projects that you've worked on across your long career in publishing and in writing. What are those projects that bring you the most joy? And what were some of those projects that you worked on that were the most challenging in your career?
Well, there were quite a few in each category. I did one of the books I wrote. I've written a number of books and Ghost wrote many more, and then published far more than that, and also consulted to help get the publication of some other very worthy books. But I think probably this book, which is the Michigan Figures Who Made a Difference, called it What They Were Thinking, Reflections on Michigan Difference Makers. And a number of the people we just mentioned, but also our great fiction writer, crime fiction writer, Elmore Leonard, who was a good friend, Sue Marks, our winner of the Academy Award for her wonderful documentary, Young at Heart, and then a number of athletes, and Joe Dumars, Charlie Gehringer, the greatest second baseman in baseball history, and Denise Illich, Tom Wilson of the Pistons, Ed Cole, our car guy, who was the creator of the Corvette, the Corvair, and the catalytic converter, very important. And so I did this book to get inside the heads of these folks with stories I knew that were not known by others, and I thought gave insights into these people. It's not a kiss and tell book at all. It gives people a different view and often a confirming view of what they thought. For example, Ernie Harwell. Ernie Harwell is exactly what you would think Ernie Harwell was. Other people were not so well known, Kevorkian being one. Kevorkian was a brilliant artist, played the harpsichord, did a lot of other things, cared, frankly, a lot about people. And the folks that were the relatives and friends of the people that he assisted in suicide loved him because he helped remove their pain and indignity of somebody they loved. So, yeah, that was an interesting book. Jennifer Granholm, our governor at the time, and now the Secretary of Energy. But it was a useful book, and it seemed to help people understand better these folks.
Well, Bill, just another few minutes with you before we'll say goodbye. I want to give you a chance to talk about your show on Independence Television in Clarkston called Conversations with Bill. Can you tell us a little bit about that show and some of the interesting people that you've had conversations with on your program?
Yeah, it's a very good title because it wasn't mine. It was the director and producer that just said, "What are we going to call this thing?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. It's not an interview show. It's just conversation." So that's what it was, Conversation with Bill. And I had one of the early ones was Alyssa Slotkin, who was then a
Bill, it appears that we have lost your audio there. Just want to see if potentially...
Is it back now?
There you go. Yes.
I don't know what happened. Anyhow, Representative Slotkin, who has become, frankly, one of the most effective and hardworking representatives in the Congress. We had Alyssa on early, but then a number of other people who are prominent in preserving and protecting our natural spaces and our environment. And those have been very popular shows. And then these people get to take the video that we do that is shown throughout North Oakland County in the Clarkston area, Independence Township, and then use it to help get their messages out, which is really one of the reasons why I do it. So we've had a roster, 20 or so over the last 4 or 5 years, of really fascinating people. I had Andy Meisner, our Oakland County treasurer, but quite a range. But the only common denominator is that they got something interesting and worthwhile to say.
Well, Bill, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you for talking about your illustrious career in publishing as well as your show on Independence Television.
Great to be with you. Good for you for doing what you're doing.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe and healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Did you know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
Welcome back to the Megacast all across the state of Michigan, including on your radio homes for the show 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. You can learn more information about everywhere that we broadcast on the radio, on TV, and on the web as well by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Joining us now is the head of school at the Jaffet School in Clawson. It's a private school over there that we are joined by their head of school, Kerri Vizena. Kerri, thank you for being with us.
Hi there. It's nice to be back.
Good to have you back. So, of course, the school had its holiday giving event before the end of the 2021 calendar year. Can you tell us about the holiday giving event? It's an annual event that's held at the school and some of the changes that were made this year given the continued crisis that we're under.
Absolutely. It's really a joyous time where our students and families join together, usually typically in our gymnasium, but because of the pandemic and situation, we moved it outdoors, out into our parking lot and staged it outside, moving chairs and had hot chocolate and treats, and the students from preschool through middle school all gave a rousing performance, and it was just a lovely evening enjoyed by all. So, and I think really the purpose behind it was to continue with that community feeling, that family-centered feeling of getting together and celebrating, which we're missing a bit during these times.
And it's interesting, too, because these annual events, these traditions, and many schools, public and private, and at all levels, are important to the school community. They're important to the students, to the educators, to parents, to alums, all across the board. And so when we continue through a crisis like this, it can be difficult, I would imagine, for schools to make changes, because of the fact that they're changes to traditions and they're different from what's been done previously, but also given the crisis that we're in. So how did that factor into the way that the Jaffet School had approached their holiday giving event planning for this year, while also keeping the greater meaning of the event and the purpose of the event in mind, to make sure that not only was the Jaffet School community having a fun time with its community, but also still providing the giving that it always does to this event to a local organization?
Sure. Great question. The real purpose behind this is that our students could join together in this manner of singing and learning songs that around the world, so to speak, and then that the idea of public speaking or feeling comfortable in front of an audience, which our students from preschool on up have lots of opportunity to do so. And that's something that we do say we do very well at Jaffet School, is to provide opportunities for public speaking. And so you would find our 3- and 4-year-olds able to be comfortable in front of groups and audiences. And so that's an important part, and one that we feel we need to continue regardless of the situation at hand. So it was just a matter of, okay, how do we do this? So we wanted it to be so that the students had the freedom of singing. So we said, let's go with outside. And we did it, and we did it extremely successfully. And I believe the reason we were able to do that is because parents just want to get together. Families want to be together. And they didn't care where it was, just that we could join whether it was outside or not. And the weather cooperated. It was it was cold, but you know, the heart of it, the love, the joy came through so clearly. And so one idea came forward, well, how can we connect this to community service, which is so important at Japhet School, that we believe we're producing the leaders of tomorrow, and how can they be those agents of change? So what we did was have the price of admission, which we never charge admission, but the price of admission was to bring in clean socks, which we then donated to a local charity, and which is Common Ground, and we gathered 619 pair of socks that evening, and those have been delivered to Common Ground, which is just around the corner from us. So.
And we're joined by Kerri Vizena, the head of school at the Japhet School, joining us on the Megacast. And of course, you just mentioned that the holiday giving event in 2021, the proceeds that came in, the items that came in that were collected from that event went to Common Ground. What went into the decision to this past year in 2021, or in this iteration of this event, support that organization?
Well, we have our 7th and 8th graders. We have a middle school component, and I think their teacher gave them several options, and it was their choice. So those students actually got in a car, drove over, and delivered them. And it's close to us, our local community, and we felt it was important to touch our local community right now and be helpful. So that evening just had many avenues, many thoughts about giving, that thought of giving, not only in our singing for the community, but also in reaching out and helping those that are in need.
And school districts and school institutions all across the board, when they have these kinds of traditions, it's not just, of course, to bring the community together and to support local organizations or wider-ranging organizations. It's also to provide a lesson to its students, and that goes for schools, students of all ages as well. So holding an event like this, holding a fundraiser like this, especially given the age range of students at the Japhet School, why is it important to not only hold this event but encourage the participation in this event, both from current students and former students, but also from their families?
Right. Well, because, as I said, being those agents of change, our students are growing, learning that they can make a difference in their communities. And we were able to do that through singing. This was one avenue. It could be another program that we hold in the future, but that always keeping in mind that there's those that are in need, and how can we be of help? How can our students make a difference? And our parents, our families, realize that's important as well. Our mission statement says that we integrate character education with strong academics. So every step we take, it revolves around our mission. And that's nurturing and leading, guiding our students to be those leaders of tomorrow.
And so, again, we're joined by Kerri Vizena, the head of school at the Japhet School in Clawson, joining us on the Megacast. And as we talk more about encouraging the nature of giving and being leaders of change in our local community and in the greater community as well, here in Michigan, here in the U.S., and around the world, middle school students at the Japhet School took on a project that's continuing, centered around a continuing issue here, not only in Metro Detroit, but all across the U.S. as we continue through the pandemic, and that's the digital divide, and continues to be a barrier for many students to remain on equal footing educationally, especially as we continue on with the pandemic, with hybrid learning, with virtual learning entirely. What did they do to try to tackle this issue, and so far, what have been the results of their efforts?
Sure. Something last fall that I actually heard it locally, that there was an organization, Human IT, that was organizing, saw that there was an extreme need for need of proper equipment, digital, electronics for students in the Detroit area. And so when seeing that, we thought, okay, let's get organized here. We all have extra equipment we're not using and or even new. And this organization would take the broad range. It was unbelievable, the broad range of equipment that they would take. And so we endeavored to do that and had quite a few trunk loads full of equipment that were donated by our JFIT community and that are now going towards helping those students and families that are in need of having proper equipment so their education can be virtual if needed, or can enjoy the resources that come from schooling, digitally, so electronically.
We're joined by Kerri Vizena. She is the head of school at the JFIT school, joining us on the Megacast. And so as we talk about the challenges that other schools are having and that other students are having in the pandemic, focusing on your students particularly and on the challenges of your institution, particularly as we continue through the pandemic, more in-person learning has been conducted over the last several months as cases had been dipping back down, and as we were starting to get a little bit, it seemed, of a handle on COVID-19, and then of course the Omicron variant and the Delta variant surge that's been resulting of late that throws another wrinkle into that. How has the JFIT school been reacting and adjusting continually as we've gone through this most recent surge of COVID-19 cases here in Michigan?
Sure. Right from the start, which we're going on almost 2 years in March, we have been dealing with and challenged, as other educational institutions. Right from the start, just very quickly, we put together a health and safety protocols for on-campus learning with a strong component of virtual. And should we have to go virtual, our teachers are very quick to pivot and adapt to that. And we've had to do that here and there, but we have been on campus throughout these 2 years, mostly. Just a few times we had to go virtual. So what we have done is to look for ways to supplement that, whether we're virtual or on campus. And a program that we got involved in last year is called the Impact Challenge. And it's out of a school in St. Louis, and it involves other schools nationwide. And I used that term previously, being agents of change. Well, this is based on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and students take one of those goals. It could be poverty, hunger, good health, well-being, clean water, quality education, and more, and focus on that and make a presentation of how they can be an agent of change in their communities. And so we will be involved in that again this year, and it's February 18th. And students do a presentation in front of community leaders in that area, and it is through Zoom. So you get to meet, our students get to meet those across the country. And last year there was even a school in Africa that was a participant. So, it really is adapting, and throughout this, finding new ways, and even in lots of cases, better ways to bring education forward and, come out of that traditional box and look for ways to get right into the community and make it hands-on with our students. And we're doing that. We are doing that at JFIT School.
We're joined by Kelly, I keep reading that incorrectly. We're joined by Kerri Vizena. My apologies. I don't know why.
That's okay.
We're joined by Kerri. It's fine. I was called Kyle earlier. It happens all the time. We're joined by Kerri Vizena, the head of school at the JFIT school, joining us on the Megacast. And so as you continue with those adjustments and with new approaches to learning, given the situation that we're in, how does that inform the future of the JFIT school when we do eventually emerge from the other side of this pandemic to a point where it is endemic and we're emerging into whatever life as normal is after that
Sure.
point. How is that informing the future of how you're going to educate students that are enrolled at your school?
Sure. JFIT School will always be a family-centered school, and that is the one component I feel that we've had to step back a little bit from and find alternate ways to include our families, because not being able to come into the building still, we have a fairly closed campus, and that works best for us. Parents are understanding. But in the future, certainly we need to get back to that, and that just bolsters the education our students gain. Like coming up this next week, we have Family Math Week. It's called Family Math Night. And then all week we celebrate math, and every day has a different focus regarding math. We're just absorbed in it. But typically we have one of those nights is called Family Math Night, where all the families come in and we have activities, and it's just a wonderful evening. We've had to put that aside, and the way we adapt it is we send home packets to every family, and they enjoy those activities excuse me, at home. So we're looking forward to getting back to that next year where they can be on campus.
We're joined by, please continue.
Yeah, so that's one way, but we're learning through this where, we have learned how we can even do a better job with supplementing or looking at teaching in a new and more far-reaching way using technology. And I think that's been the silver lining in that, is that we're open to doing things in new ways and not staying on the same course, doing the same thing over and over. And I think many people in education have found that has been a silver lining.
We're joined by Kerri Vizena, the head of school at the JFIT School, joining us on the Megacast. And so if people are interested or families are interested in their children potentially attending the JFIT School, either as they begin their education or in the near future as they continue their education, how can they go about that, and are there openings currently in your school system in order to bring in some new students?
Sure. The best way is to go to our website, which is jfitschool.org, JAPHET school.org. All our information is right there. I call it the window to JFIT, and excellent information there. You can also call us at 248-585-9150. We do have openings, mostly in our 3rd through 8th grade classes. We tend to fill quickly in our lower preschool through 2nd grade classrooms, but we have lots of wonderful opportunities for students in 3rd through 8th grade just waiting for them, so as well.
Well, Kerri, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and have a great day.
You as well. Again, if you would like to learn more information about enrollment or other info on the JFIT School, you can visit their website at jfitschool.org. And again, the spelling of JFIT School is JAPHET, so jfitschool.org, or call them at 248-585-9150. That's 248-585-9150. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we'll continue to talk about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, not only on our children, but also on adults as well, with licensed therapist Kelly Hausman, who will talk about not only the impact of COVID-19 on our New Year's resolutions, but also on our general mental health as well, and some of the steps that we can take to improve our mental health all across the board. That's coming up next. You are watching and listening to the Megacast.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior.
These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different.
One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games?
Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM. Joining us now is Kelly Hausman, a licensed therapist, a mental health advocate, public speaker, blogger, podcast host, and wellness expert based in the Metro Detroit area. Kelly, thank you for being with us today.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. And so at this moment here in late January, this is right around the time where we start to see that first wave of people that have made New Year's resolutions, either lapse on the resolutions, modify them a little bit, or just altogether give up on them. What are some common New Year's resolutions for 2022 that you're hearing more about than in past years, and how effective, at least with those that you have talked about these potential resolutions with, have they been so far, as we're about a month at this point into 2022?
Sure. If living through a pandemic has taught us anything, it's absolutely the importance that we place on health and how valuable it is. So lots of health, whether it's losing weight, eating healthier, getting more sleep, that's probably the number one thing that's been coming up in my practice, is things that we can all do to make ourselves just overall wellness a little bit better this year.
And so, Kelly, we've spoken to other people that are mental health advocates and work in the mental health space and in that area of the industry about the differences between making this big resolution, this broad goal, versus a series of smaller goals that you are pursuing over time that ultimately are leading to that collective. Which strategy do you suggest as being more, or do you find in your practice and in your experience with clients as being more effective, not only in fulfilling that desired outcome that people are seeking, but also in maintaining momentum and maintaining confidence that that goal is attainable?
Right. And that's why I love how you said breaking it down. I'm a big fan of baby steps, because a lot of times if we do have this big overwhelming goal, that's why so many people will stop exercising after a month or fall off a diet. It's because maybe they didn't do the proper baby steps to get there. So I like having smaller, achievable goals that you can check off, and you're basically retraining your brain to believe that you can accomplish something and you can get to that point. So checking off all these smaller goals gives you the confidence and kind of that snowball effect, so you can keep going to reach your end game.
And in many cases, if people are setting a goal, that accountability or on their goal or on their New Year's resolution, whatever the case may be, ultimately them pursuing that with full confidence and with the full fervor that really needs to go into accomplishing anything in life. It all comes down to personal accountability, and in some cases that accountability can wane over time because other things happen, other things pop up in life that either are higher priority or can detract from pursuing that goal. So how can people promise or make that promise in committing their goal, or better commit to achieving their goal as we continue through 2022, or as many people are struggling with their early 2022 goals or their resolutions?
Sure. And I love huge goals. I want to see people make huge changes in life. But what I always will tell my clients, and even myself, we have to really put a lot of prep work into it. A lot of us only look at the goal with the end in mind, but we don't really think about, am I willing to 100% commit to what it's going to take to get there? So if it's, for example, losing weight, are you really going to commit to getting up early and working out, changing your grocery shopping habits, dieting, really just kind of planning this out, thinking a little bit more time to think about what it's going to take to get into it, and also realizing that you're committing to some uncomfortable feelings going into these goals. Exercising and waking up early is not easy. Choosing some vegetables over pizza is not easy. But again, if you're going to commit to it, we have to kind of commit to all of this, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and knowing that, okay, there's going to be some bumps along the road, some uncomfortable feelings. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to remember why I want this, and that will help get us through.
And what are some of, on the wellness and the health front, on the fitness and nutrition front, a lot of people are making these big goals, or are making even these individual goals, and maybe their motivation behind those goals is in some cases the problem. They're making them because I just want to look better for this, or I want to fit into this outfit for this occasion. And while those goals are nice and they're fine, and in some cases they can be workable, in many cases that can make for anxiety for a lot of people as they're pursuing those goals, as they get closer to those deadlines. What's a better approach for people, psychologically speaking, and also from just a goal-seeking standpoint, so that they're able to achieve those goals without so much of the pressure that can get in the way when you're trying to do it for a very specific and maybe not worthwhile purpose?
Yeah, so in my office, I have a big sign that says, remember your why. And I think especially with resolutions, this applies. Number one, why are you doing this? And it has to be a compelling enough reason. It can't just be, because someone else wants me to, or something like that. It has to be worth it to you. It has to really align with kind of what your purpose is, your morals are, your values, and just keep coming back to that. What is my why? Why am I really doing this? A lot of times with the health and the fitness, it's because I want to be around longer, to watch my children grow up, or to spend more time with my spouse, or to be healthier in general. So remembering your why, and at the core of this, what's really guiding you through it.
We're joined by Kelly Hausman, a licensed therapist, joining us on the Megacast, and I've heard a lot also about vision boards in recent years. That people will put together boards with some examples of their goals, some examples of their dreams going forward, things they want to accomplish or eventually get to, and that can maybe provide some additional motivation for them to ultimately achieve those goals. For those that are not familiar, and not entirely familiar, what is a vision board? What typically goes into them? And then can you explain how effective is a tool like this for people to have a reminder of those goals and to continue to focus on those specific goals that they want to accomplish in life?
Sure. So vision boards are typically poster-sized representations of, it can be pictures of things that you hope to have in your life one day. It can be material things. A lot of people put cars or homes or vacations that they dream of. It can be phrases or sayings that really mean a lot to you. But basically, it's a visual representation of all of the things that you really want out of your life and all of your goals. And interestingly enough, visualization and putting things out of your brain, and whether it's writing it down or putting it into a vision board, can be so effective. They've actually done studies with athletes that show that even visualizing them going through their practice or through their routines can be almost as effective as doing it themselves. So there is huge power in putting things out there and visualizing and having your goal reminded every day and looking at something that you really want. It's a great way to visually motivate yourself too.
We're joined by Kelly Hausman, a licensed therapist, joining us on the Megacast. You can learn more information about the services that she provides, questions, and learn more and get in contact with her as well about therapy, about other information as well by going to kellyhausmancounseling.com. Again, that is kellyhausmancounseling.com. And as we are approaching the two-year official mark of the pandemic in March of this year, we continue to see the toll that the pandemic is taking, or relating at least, the relative toll that the pandemic is taking on people's mental health. And of course, that connects to so many other things, such as goal accomplishment, and can be a big risk factor in whether or not those goals are accomplished. As we continue through the COVID-19 pandemic, what are you seeing as trends on the mental health front that are continuing to drag some people down in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sure. I have never been more busy in my practice than I have been the last 2 years. If that tells you anything about the state of mental health, it's just tough. I think, 2 years into this, we are craving that normalcy, and the hardest part for people is just not knowing what's next. And especially for people with anxiety, we like to control things. So not being able to plan ahead is the hardest thing. And people are still struggling. It's really difficult, especially when you don't know what's coming the next day. So lots of anxiety, depression coming up, insecurity, actually a lot of relationship issues too. We still have a lot of people working from home, spending a lot more time with their partner than they typically would. So people are still trying to figure this out, even though we are going to be going into the third year of this. It's still really hard for, I would say, all of us. I don't know if anyone really knows what's going on. It's just tough for everyone right now.
And then so, Kelly, on that front, if people are recognizing that their mental health has taken a toll as a result of the pandemic, or even if the circumstances of the pandemic in relation to other factors in their life have made them realize they need to work at their mental health and improving their mental health, and they want to take that first step, what are some considerations people should be making as they're seeking a therapist, or seeking counseling, and then as they initialize their therapy?
Sure. I think there's a big misconception with therapy that something has to be wrong with you to go to it. Sure. But I believe that every single person can benefit from therapy. There's always something, whether it's how you're coping with the pandemic, childhood issues, planning for the future, relationships. Most of the clients that I see, we talk about kind of everyday problems that a lot of people have that we don't realize, like, oh, I don't realize there's others struggling with this. So therapy is just a great way to talk about, and again, get that stuff out of your head and into the universe. It's such a great way to talk things through. And again, it doesn't have to be something wrong with you. It can truly be just wanting to plan out and live a better life for yourself, and chat with someone about it. Get another perspective.
Kelly, just another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else at this time that would be important for our audience to keep in consideration as their goal setting, or on the mental health front as it relates to COVID-19, or in a general sense?
Sure. So we are kind of at peak level for seasonal depression right now, too, especially living in a northern climate like Michigan. It's gray most of the winter. So seasonal depression has come up quite a bit, especially with the post-holiday blues. That's a big thing, too. So if you've noticed that kind of your energy's low, your appetite's changing, you don't have the same desire to do things, that can all be signs of seasonal depression. And there's some great ways to kind of cope with that. One of my favorite favorite things is they actually make lamps for seasonal depression. Those can be huge. You plug them in, you sit in front of them for 10, 20, whatever it is. And that can be a game changer, especially for someone who lives in a dark climate. And also kind of just getting your vitamin D levels checked, exercising more, talking to a therapist about it. This is a big time of year where people will seek therapy because, again, we are after the holidays. In this seasonal funk, it's kind of a slow couple months for a lot of people. So if any of this is affecting you or resonating with you, definitely find a therapist. Come talk to us. We have seen and heard it all. We don't judge anyone. It's a safe space to talk about whatever's on your mind, and it's something I really recommend for everyone.
If you'd like to get more information on how you can get in contact with Kelly or ask some questions to her and her team as well, you can go to kellyhausmancounseling.com. Kelly, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council,
we work together to protect water resources for everyone.
Most of the pollution entering our rivers is carried by rainwater that runs off roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
A rain garden helps catch stormwater runoff.
Rain gardens and their plants help dirty runoff soak into the ground.
You can do your part to help keep our water clean.
Learn about rain gardens and native plants.
So consider a rain garden in your home landscaping.
Catch the runoff with a rain garden.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
I couldn't breathe at all. There was lots of talk about putting me on a ventilator. I thought I was gonna die. I was 39 weeks pregnant and had a scheduled C-section. During that time, I got COVID and was hospitalized for a month. I had a blood clot in my lungs. It caused me to go into right-sided heart failure. I was really scared. I kept texting my husband and my mom, telling them how scared I was, and I was worried that he was gonna grow up without a mom. And then I was worried if, when I did get home, that he wouldn't know who I was. Being 27 and a mom and a wife and having that all almost taken away from me. Scary, and if a vaccine can prevent that from happening, why not? Get your vaccine. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you. Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation. Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime-victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council.
As partners working together to protect our water resources, we agree.
Pet waste is a source of harmful bacteria in the Huron River.
When it's left on the ground, it can wash into the storm drains.
These lead directly to our streams. No filters, no treatment.
Here's one thing we know that can help keep our water clean.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
So pick up pet waste and trash it.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
72.7% of high school students get less than the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. This can cause pain, obesity, and can very negatively affect your mental health. When you have a consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, you get sick less often, lose more weight, and have better relationships with those around you. For more information about the dangers of sleep deprivation, go to sleepfoundation.org. This message is brought to you by the WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
It's the Great Lakes water. And so what people do ends up in our waterways.
Flushable wipes are just evil. They should be thrown away. They're impossible to destroy, and they can cause significant problems.
One of the main things when you're cooking is to not dump fats, oils, and greases down your drains.
They stick to the sides of pipes. They stick to everything they come in contact with. Don't put it down the sink.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more information about the program by visiting civiccentertv.com and clicking on our Megacast link, or just typing in civiccentertv.com/Megacast. There you'll find more information about everywhere that we broadcast live and live to tape, and find each of our full episodes and each individual interview on demand. Again, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Joining us now once again is Chuck Christian, former University of Michigan tight end and also a survivor of the sexual abuse of Dr. Robert Anderson. Chuck, thank you for being with us again.
My pleasure.
Appreciate having you on. So big news this week was that the university, as well as survivors, reached a $490 million total settlement. $460 million of that will go to the approximately 1,050 victims who are current claimants against the university, and $30 million are reserved for future claimants that will be able to claim their settlement by July 31st. Of 2023. Now, given what we've spoken about previously and the struggle of survivors to have any consistent or any substantial conversations with the university coming to this settlement, now that the settlement has been made, what are your initial thoughts on the settlement and on where this puts yourself and other survivors in your recovery and the future?
Wow. Well, honestly, I had mixed feelings. When I heard the number of 490, I'm like, oh no, we could have done better. And the reason I'm saying that is because we had just got back, Tad DeLuca and John Vaughn and I had just gotten back from Los Angeles because we recorded 2 shows with Dr. Phil. And Michigan found out about those 2 shows that were being recorded, so they decided they wanted to clean house really fast before the show aired. That's why they got rid of Schlissel, and that's why they settled it, because the 490 after Dr. Phil would have been $1 billion, and they knew that. That's why they went ahead and settled really quickly.
And as you mentioned that the university came to a settlement pretty quickly, especially given the last week or so with the additional scandal and the adjacent scandal with now former university president Mark Schlissel. In the time that led up to that settlement, and especially in the last couple of months since you and I last spoke here on the Megacast, had that communication with the university at all improved from your perspective or from the perspective of other survivors, between the survivors as a collective or individuals and the university?
No, there was no communication. And in fact, for the last 4 months, I've been trying to speak with the Board of Regents, and I got blocked time and time again, because when you put your name on the list to speak, you have to tell what you want to talk about. And that made it really easy for them to weed me out to make sure that I didn't get a chance to speak. So in December, I said, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to make sure I speak. So they wouldn't let me be on the list. So I said, I'm going to speak anyway. So I stood up and I started screaming, and I waved my hands and I said, listen, I've been trying to speak to you guys for the last 4 months, and I've been getting blocked, and I don't know how much time I have. So I can't keep playing this game month after month with you guys, because I have a death sentence on me. So I am not going to continue. So I said to the president, can I have 5 minutes? Can I have 5 minutes? And President Schlissel said, okay, Mr. Christian, you get your 5 minutes. And then I got a chance to speak. But then in a newspaper, he said, oh, we give the victims a chance to speak. In fact, just last month, Chuck Christian spoke to us. Like, wait a minute, that wasn't the case at all, but okay.
Yeah, and so Chuck, given that there was the ongoing lawsuit, and maybe if there's any benefit of the doubt that can be given whatsoever, and there isn't, to the university, that would be maybe a justification of limiting the speech between the Board of Regents and other administrators and survivors. But the communication issues that were there before there was a settlement, before there was even a lawsuit, right after the news had initially broke about the first initial claimants of sexual abuse by Dr. Robert Anderson, among which you were. And so now that there has been a settlement, given what the university's communication and lack thereof with survivors of Dr. Anderson, with victims of Dr. Robert Anderson, do you believe, now that there has been a settlement, that communication with the university will improve at all between yourself and other survivors and its leadership?
I certainly hope so, because they need to really speak with us to see how it happened, why it happened, the impact that it had on the victims and all of that, because you can't just fix it if you don't know exactly the impact that it's had on the victims. So they definitely need to improve their communication with us, no question about it.
And so, again, we're joined by Chuck Christian, former University of Michigan tight end and a survivor of the sexual abuse of Dr. Robert Anderson. Of course, earlier this week, a $490 million settlement was reached between the University of Michigan and the collective of victims and survivors of Dr. Robert Anderson's abuse. And so, as you said, you were out shooting an episode of Dr. Phil with other survivors on this very topic itself when you heard the news of the settlement coming in. Since the settlement has been announced, in your conversations with other survivors, and you personally as well, does this help with the healing and even beyond that, more importantly, where does the healing process go from here? Because on one hand, this part of the process in the wake of years upon years, decades of abuse by this university official, by this doctor, one part of that chapter is closed, but that's not how recovery works. It continues on. It's a constant thing.
Right, it really is. But it was good to see that Michigan really admitted that they dropped the ball when it came to Anderson. And I think that that's what the lawsuit is saying, that they dropped the ball and they want to make things right. I wish they had just waited till after Dr. Phil to try to make things right. It would have been double. Oh, my goodness.
We're joined by Chuck Christian, former University of Michigan tight end, and also one of the approximately 1,050 current claimants of abuse from Dr. Robert Anderson during his time at the University of Michigan from 1968 until 2003. And so, of course, you also mentioned previously, and we touched on very briefly, the recent firing of former university president Mark Schlissel due to inappropriate emails that he was sending with a subordinate in the university, many of, at the very least, a flirtatious nature, but you could also describe it as a sexual nature as well. Given that they had that issue that was ongoing for years as well, that had just been identified in the past several months, that had been independently investigated in just the past several months, and then, of course, executed in the firing of the former president last week. Given that this is another issue of not quite that same nature, but in the same general area of the nature of other sexual abuse issues or harassment issues at the very least on the campus at the University of Michigan, how much more important now, given that this has been an issue, of course, in the athletic department because of the abuse of Dr. Robert Anderson, and in other departments in the university as well, not to mention student body issues that have been an issue at many universities here in Michigan and across the U.S. for years. How much more important because of that, because of this instance, and on top of that, of course, the ongoing investigation and discussions about the abuse of Dr. Anderson, is it to have that communication between the university and victims and survivors of this and other instances of sexual abuse on the campus of the University of Michigan?
Yeah, it's extremely important because, that's the way you squash things like that from happening. Yeah. One thing about leadership is, part of leadership is fixing problems and not being a problem. And Dr. Schlissel was a problem, but they didn't just find out about this. Yeah. This has been swept under the rug for a while, because that's the culture at Michigan, to sweep the sexual crimes and the sexual inappropriateness under the rug instead of dealing with it. But that's why I say when Michigan was, because Dr. Phil got in touch with Michigan, and when he got in touch with him, they just started cleaning house, starting with Schlissel, starting from the top down, which is good, but it shouldn't have taken this to make this happen. It should have been something that was done before all this other stuff came up.
We're joined by Chuck Christian, former University of Michigan tight end, and one of approximately 1,050 claimants so far of sexual abuse and assault by Dr. Robert Anderson during his time at the University of Michigan, of which a $490 million settlement was recently reached, of which the current claimants will receive $460 million of that settlement, and another $30 million will continue to be in place for future claimants through July 31st of 2023. And so now that the settlement's been finalized, how do you and your fellow survivors go about continuing to tell your stories and to tell the importance and to preach the importance of tackling these issues in institutions and tackling these issues in our society seriously and with vigor, given that while this settlement has been made, the problem itself doesn't go away?
Exactly. We've settled our case for the most part, but this is still a problem. This is still a culture. This is still something that what we really have, John, Tad, and I have been trying to do is to help people get their voice back, because a lot of victims don't have a voice. They don't feel like they can speak out about these things because there's so much shame involved. But for me, there was no shame for me, because I was supposed to have been dead 3 years ago, according to my doctors, from cancer. So when they gave me the opportunity to speak out, I said, yes, I'll speak out. I'll be the first one to come out and say that, I was the first football player to speak out. And but that was because I had nothing to lose, and I was not about to just sit back and watch Michigan continue to play this game and to keep sweeping things under the rug. And that was what was driving me. And I couldn't just sit back and watch it happen. And then once John and Tad and I all got together, because I just met John and Tad 4 months ago, and but it feels like we've been best friends forever. And once we got our heads together, we just started working together, and we became a lot more powerful as a team. So that's why we decided to continue to work together.
Well, Chuck, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us and giving us more insight on the perspective of the victims of this abuse at the hands of a doctor that was employed by the University of Michigan for several decades, from 1968 to 2003, as well as where the victims and the survivors go from here to continue to tell their story and get the important message out there of addressing these issues head on and addressing them seriously.
And another thing too is the show is going to broadcast on the February 1st and 2nd. So it's a 2-day show, because Dr. Phil said this is so powerful, we need to use 2 days for it. And that's what we're doing. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about helping people get their voices back and to eliminate the shame, because it's too much of that.
Well, we appreciate your time, and thank you very much for joining us, Chuck.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Thanks for coming on the show. We've been joined by Chuck Christian, former University of Michigan tight end, joining us on the Megacast. You'll be able to see him as well as others among the claimants of sexual abuse from Dr. Robert Anderson on Dr. Phil, as Chuck mentioned multiple times, February 1st and February 2nd. Check your local listings so that you can tune in and hear their stories and hear those very important conversations on those 2 days and 2 episodes of Dr. Phil's show. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Megacast. A big thank you to Chuck Christian for joining us, as well as Kelly Hausman, licensed therapist, for joining us as well. Kerri Vizena, the head of the JFIT School, for joining us. Bill Haney, the book guy, and of course, Sarah Gudenau, journalism student at Oakland University. You can find all of our full episodes and each individual interview on demand at civiccentertv.com/megacast, as well as links to all of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets, so you can watch us on your time 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all throughout Oakland County and around the great state of Michigan. Big thank you to our crew as well. Calvin Brown, our studio producer and our board operator, here with me each and every day, technical directing the show. Jared Clark, our Zoom producer over at the offices of My Michigan TV in Troy. Larry Nyland, the king of television himself, as we call him, our producer here, getting everybody scheduled and ready for their appearance on the Megacast and helping us get ready for each show as well. And of course, Maddie Mustian out at Master Control, getting us both on and off the air. Coming up next on My Michigan TV, it's Steve Lato Live, and we will return on Monday at 10 a.m.